let's start by talking about your shocking exit from the show. So, as punishment for not having your armband during the helicopter extraction challenge, you were tasked with getting wet from head to toe. You need to roll around in the sand, get your face all in it, and then you had to sit like that for 30 minutes. How long did it take you to realize something wasn't right? Because as a viewer, it seemed like it was immediate.
I don't even really fully remember, to be honest. I mean, yeah, the punishment was that I had to keep getting in and out of the water, rolling in the sand, so that at all points I was like wet and covered in sand. Um, and it kind of like I got sent the clip to rewatch, and I kind of like it happened faster even in my memory, but basically after I had jumped in a couple of times, I started just having this feeling of like constriction in my throat, and I was like coughing and trying to get it out, and I just like couldn't quite catch my breath. Um, and I remember like looking at the water when I was coughing, and that was the water from before day one. It had been filled. Like we had all had to go in the mud and go in that water, and people had had to jump in multiple times. And then it had been sitting there every day in 120-degree heat. And I think that just like some really nasty bacteria had been growing in the water. And on one of the times that I jumped into the tub, I accidentally like ingested some of it, and it triggered
Wow.
an allergic reaction. But I've never had an allergic reaction like that. I've never had anything
Oh my
that
God.
did anything like that. So I didn't really know what was happening. I just felt like this really tight feeling in my chest, and then it was kind of getting worse. And then luckily they called me back to go into the medical office, and as soon as I got in there, it like really got bad, and I really couldn't breathe, and that's when I was really panicking. But Jamie, the doctor, was amazing and had like such great bedside manner, and I don't know, told me afterward that the calmer he is, it usually means the more serious it is, and the more frightened he himself is. And he was very calm, so that was kind of scary to hear.
That's funny. As a viewer, I was like, why is this guy so calm? Like, Gus is like low key dying right now. Like, why is so calm?
Yeah, he was just trying to keep me calm, but he said it was like he said he immediately knew that it was really, really serious.
So you went into anaphylactic shock, correct?
Yeah.
And as a viewer, like it was horrific. And you kind of mentioned this. What was going through your mind in that moment?
I mean, I don't know, to be honest. Like at the beginning, I was like, I was like, I don't know what's going on. I just like, I'm having a hard time breathing, but I wasn't thinking like, I'm about to die, I'm going to die, anything like that. I just was kind of like, I'm having a really hard time breathing. And I even was like, sort of able to say that to him. But as I was sitting there, it like felt like it was tightening more and more, to the point where like, then I really couldn't breathe. And pretty much right until he stabbed me with adrenaline, like those last few moments, I was really scared. Like I knew I was with him, and so I had a lot of trust in him, but I was definitely starting to get panicky. And then the way that the epinephrine works is that like within 30 seconds of receiving that shot of adrenaline, like it started to take effect. I was like able to start breathing more
Wow.
normally, and a lot of the feelings subsided. And then within like a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes, I felt like completely normal. So when I was in the ambulance going back to the hospital, I was completely coherent, fine, wasn't in any pain, wasn't having a hard time breathing, and like wanted to go back into the show. I was like, I'm fine now. And they were basically like, no, you have to go to the hospital to be observed because you can go into repeat anaphylaxis, and
Yeah.
we can't risk it.
Well, actually, you answered my question. I was going to ask what happened after you went to the hospital, but that's wild that in just a few minutes you already felt like you were back to normal. It was like 0 to 100 back to
Yeah,
7.
it really was very, very crazy. Like the epinephrine did exactly what it was supposed to, and within a few minutes I was like fine. Like before I even got in the ambulance, and I talked to them. I was like, can I stay? Like I'm
Yeah.
okay now. Like sorry for being dramatic. And they were like, no, you have to go to the hospital. And I was like, I really like, I promise I'm fine. And they're like, we can't risk it. We also don't know what the allergy was to, so we can't risk it potentially happening again or re-exposing you to it. So they made me leave.
So what was your reaction when you realized that you weren't going to be able to go back?
It was frustrating. I don't know. I mean, I just like I'm so competitive that there was like a part of me that it felt like then I was like losing. But I feel like I actually like in the moment was just bummed because I didn't get to go back and see everybody again. Like I didn't even get to go say goodbye to
Yeah.
my friends that were still there, and with a lot of other people's exits, they did get to do that. So I was kind of like sad, but it also was just like so much just happened in such a quick amount of time that I think I was just kind of like stunned. It probably was the right time for me to leave. They said at the beginning that everyone kind of leaves at the right time for them,
Yeah.
whether that's because you just physically can't handle it anymore or whatever it is. And I feel like I went into it with such a competitive mindset and such a focus on like winning, and uh, it was something that I sort of learned throughout the experience was that it isn't really a win lose show. I mean, it pushes
Yeah.
each person to their limits, and it tests each person in all these different ways and in ways that you haven't been tested before. But ultimately, it's like you're trying to learn something about yourself, and I feel like I learned that, and I also feel like I learned that in part from having to leave early, and like that's something that I have to like just deal with. And as someone who's super competitive, I don't know if I would have gotten that same feeling or reaction had I like made it to the end and uh, like won. I think I don't know. I guess I left when I was supposed to, as the universe intended, whatever. And it was only like a day before everyone else, so it was fine.
The final challenge that you did, you absolutely dominated it. The helicopter extraction challenge. Like you were like a beast going up there. Like compared to everyone else, like they were even like all the staff, they were like, okay, like you absolutely killed it. Was it nice that that was your final challenge and you kind of ended on a high note? Like you absolutely like the last one you did amazing with it.
Um, I mean, yeah, I haven't seen it yet. So, but
It's
but in memory, I like remember doing pretty well with it, and it was one that a lot of people struggled with. So it felt good to do a good job, and the DS were not quick to give you a pat on the back,
oh
really.
yeah.
And when I climbed into the helicopter and then we were flying out, um, big Blue Eyes. That's what we were calling him. I actually I can't remember his name. Billy was he kind of did give me a pat on the back and was like brilliant. And I was like, oh wow, okay, thanks.
You should definitely rewatch that because I would say that was like one of the most like most praise I saw from them was after you did that challenge. Cause I mean, yeah, everyone else struggled. Even like Danny, who like completed it as well, you like next level. And I'm not just saying that because I'm talking to you. I'm just saying you should definitely watch it. You'll be very proud of yourself.
I'm excited. Well, yeah, we don't get to watch anything in advance, really. They did send me the my allergic reaction anaphylaxis clip, but that was actually the only clip from the entire series that I saw ahead of time. So,
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, they didn't hesitate to show everything. It was alarming, definitely
yeah,
horrible to watch. I was like, oh my God, it's
yeah,
horrible.
it was like an exorcism. I'm like
No,
shaking, my head spinning around.
I'm like, get it out. Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Um, so you mentioned this a little bit, but what initially inspired you to do the show? And is it what you expected it would be? I think you said it was not as much of a competition as you thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it actually wasn't what I expected it to be. I really did. I was thinking it was a competition, so I was like kind of going to win, and then like they told us in advance that like we would have to do these physical challenges, and then it was really going to push us to our limits, and they kind of were like, would you be okay with this, and like jumping out of a helicopter and doing this and having to get wet and like having to get muddy, and I was like, yeah, I mean that all sounds fine. That sounds fun, um, and it wasn't fun. I mean, those challenges were, but a lot of the other stuff, some of the more physical challenges where it was just like running up that spiral staircase with heavy backpack and boots, or
Yeah,
um, pushing a car across the desert when it like was literally not moving at all in the sand. Those were just so incredibly draining that like in no way, shape, or form were they fun. But also
yeah,
just the sitting around, we were always like on edge. You never really got to relax because you never knew when you were going to be called on, and so it was really stressful. But it was a good experience. Like I'm glad I did it, and I made friends, and I feel like I did learn about myself, and um, yeah, it was cool, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be.
Um, which of the tasks would you say was the most difficult? Because you mentioned after the chemical warfare challenge that you never experienced pain like that, and you've broken all these bones, but you said you never experienced pain like you did in that after that challenge.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, that is true, but I think like what I really meant was like I've never experienced pain like that. Like it wasn't like it
Yeah.
was more painful than anything I had ever experienced.
God.
It was just a really different pain. It was horrible. It felt, I mean, it felt so unnatural. I mean, which it is. It's chemical, but it's like chemical
Yeah.
warfare. But like it really felt, um, it felt just so toxic. Like as you're feeling it in your lungs and in your stomach, it was going through my mind that like this is not a thing you should ever be feeling. You should never. It was like this is not
Yeah.
like this is not normal. And it was really painful. It felt like my like eyeballs and my like lungs were on fire, and every time I breathed in, it really was horrible. But the most difficult challenge, I mean, that one sucked, but it wasn't like, it was like probably 5 minutes, the whole thing. And then you started to feel better when you were back out in the wind. But the pushing the car across that desert,
Oh my God.
when we started pushing it, it moved like an inch, and we had to go like a mile, and the sand was just falling under our feet. The car was barely rolling. And then we had to carry all this equipment, and it was just, I mean, it was 120 degrees. It was so crazy.
It wasn't just a really interesting mix of celebrities and different backgrounds and athletic ability and things like that. Were there any recruits who surprised you with how they fared in the physical challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I was like genuinely surprised throughout the whole thing by Hannah Brown. I mean, she is just a badass. I mean, she is super tough. She's just got like a really positive attitude. She was definitely a surprise, and she killed it. And I was also surprised by Kenya Moore. I mean, I think I knew she was going to be a badass from Housewives, but I don't know. I feel like you don't think of Miss USA or The Bachelorette as people that are going to be killing these challenges where they're jumping out of helicopters and like friggin' base jumping off of skyscrapers, and they did. They were both so badass.
It made me laugh when you guys were all, at one point you guys were all talking about foods you miss from home and what you wish, and you said I have ice cream like every night. When you got home, when you finally, out of the hospital, you went home, what's the first thing that you ate? What's the first thing that you did? Did you have ice cream?
Yeah. And it really is like my favorite food. I mean, I like try not to eat it as often as I do, but I still do. I love ice cream, and I love sweet cereal. And I actually blame my mom, because she was like a health freak when we were kids, and we like never got to have sweet things. And then it's like one of those people that like doesn't drink until they're 21 and then is like a meth addict. Me with cereal and ice cream.